Hello, my dear friends, and welcome back to our channel Mysterious Untold Books. Introduction. Imagine a world where the game of love follows strategic rules, where attraction is an art to be mastered, and romantic conquest requires tactical brilliance. This is a provocative premise that unfolds in the pages of this ancient guide to seduction, written by a man who boldly proclaimed himself the authority on matters of the heart. Nearly 2,000 years before modern dating manuals appeared, this Roman poet crafted a comprehensive handbook that treats love as a skillful pursuit, complete with techniques for finding, winning, and keeping romantic partners. What makes this work so remarkable is not merely its audacious subject matter, but its enduring resonance across centuries. The author's witty observations about human nature, his understanding of psychology, and his recognition of the theatrical elements of courtship remain startlingly relevant today. Through elegant words filled with mythological references and practical advice, he created more than a simple manual. He composed a cultural artifact that illuminates ancient Roman society while simultaneously speaking to the unchanging dynamics of human attraction. Despite its controversial reception both in its time and throughout history, the work stands as a testament to the enduring human preoccupation with the mysteries and machinations of romantic pursuit. Chapter 1. The Poet of Passion, Ovid's Life and Literary Context. Born in 1943 BC during the tumultuous final years of the Roman Republic, Publius Ovidius Naso emerged from an equestrian family with expectations that he would pursue a respectable career in law or politics. Though he received the finest education Rome could offer and briefly held minor public positions, Ovid's heart belonged to poetry. Against his father's wishes, he abandoned the path of civic duty to immerse himself in the literary world of Augustan Rome, a golden age that had already produced the masterpieces of Virgil and Horace. By the time Ovid began writing his Guide to Seduction, he had already established himself as a literary voice through his earlier works, including the Amours, love elegies, and Heroids, fictional letters from mythological heroines. What distinguished Ovid from his poetic predecessors was his playful irreverence and his willingness to subvert traditional forms. While Virgil celebrated Rome's imperial destiny and Horace offered philosophical reflections, Ovid turned his attention to the intimate realm of personal relationships, treating love not as the tormented experience portrayed by earlier elegies, but as a game with rules to be learned and mastered. The social and political context of Augustan Rome significantly shaped Ovid's work. Emperor Augustus had instituted moral reforms aimed at restoring traditional family values and addressing what he perceived as a decline in Roman virtue. These reforms included strict laws against adultery and incentive for marriage and procreation. Ovid's lighthearted treatment of extramarital affairs and casual seduction stood in direct contradiction to the emperor's moral agenda. This tension between artistic freedom and political ideology would eventually have devastating consequences for the poet, who was exiled by Augustus in 8 CE, partly because of the perceived immorality of his Guide to Love. Despite, or perhaps because of, its controversial nature, Ovid's work captured the imagination of Roman readers. It spoke to the sophisticated urban elite who frequented the theaters, porticos, and dinner parties of imperial Rome. These were spaces where men and women mixed more freely than in previous generations, creating new opportunities for flirtation and romantic intrigue. Ovid's detailed descriptions of these social settings reveal a society that, despite official moral strictures, embraced the pleasures and games of romantic pursuit. Ovid's genius lay not merely in his subject matter, but in his innovative approach to didactic poetry. Traditional didactic works instructed readers in serious subjects like farming or philosophy, but Ovid brilliantly parodied this form by applying its solemn conventions to the frivolous art of seduction. The resulting work balances practical advice with mythological digressions, creating a playful tension between the mundane and the sublime that became Ovid's literary signature. Chapter 2. Finding Love, the Hunting Grounds of Romance. Ovid opens his practical guide by framing the pursuit of love as a strategic enterprise akin to hunting or warfare. Your first job, then, love's volunteer recruit, is to find the object of your pursuit, he declares, immediately establishing that successful romance begins with knowing where to look. With the confidence of an experienced commander, he directs his readers to the prime locations in Imperial Rome where potential lovers might be found in abundance. The poet meticulously catalogues the city's social spaces as hunting grounds for romance. The colonnades and porticos built by Augustus and his family, ironically intended to showcase imperial virtue, become, in Ovid's hands, perfect venues for flirtation. The theaters, with their tiered seating that force physical proximity, offer natural opportunities for touching knees or whispering compliments. The Circus Maximus, where chariot races draw crowds of excited spectators, provides another fertile setting for romantic encounters. Even law courts, temples, and religious festivals appear in his inventory of promising locations. With each suggestion, Ovid reinforces his central premise that Rome itself, with its magnificent public spaces and vibrant social life, is designed for romantic opportunity. Beyond identifying mere locations, Ovid offers detailed tactical advice on how to behave in these settings. At the theater, he recommends gallantly brushing dust from a woman's dress or providing a footstool for her comfort. At dinner parties, he suggests using wine to loosen inhibitions while maintaining enough sobriety to execute one's romantic strategy. He even advises on the exploitation of public spectacles, such as triumphal processions, as occasion to sidle up to an attractive stranger and offer explanations of the event. These suggestions reveal not just practical techniques but provide a window into the elaborate social rituals of Roman society. Ovid's approach to finding love reflects his thoroughly urban sensibility. Unlike the pastoral romances celebrated by other Roman poets, his guide presupposes a sophisticated city dweller familiar with Rome's entertainment and leisure spaces. His lovers meet not in idyllic countryside retreats, but amid the bustle of the empire's capital. This urban focus highlights the deeply social nature of Roman romance. Love in Ovid's world is not a private emotion but a public performance conducted according to understood conventions. The poet's advice on finding love contains subtle social commentary as well. His catalogue of romantic venues emphasizes spaces where social distinctions might temporarily blur, where a young man of modest means might encounter women otherwise inaccessible to him. The theater, the circus, and the public festival were democratizing spaces in an otherwise hierarchical society. By highlighting these locations, Ovid suggests that love, at least as a game, could transcend some of the rigid boundaries of Roman social life. Accompanying these practical suggestions are mythological digressions that elevate the text beyond mere instruction. Ovid recalls the legendary abduction of the Sabine women during Rome's founding, drawing a provocative parallel between these ancient forced marriages and the romantic pursuits of his own day. These mythological references add literary sophistication, while reminding readers that the patterns of courtship they engage in have deep historical and cultural roots. Chapter 3. Winning Hearts, Strategies of Seduction. Having guided his readers to the prime locations for finding love, Ovid turns his attention to the subtle art of winning hearts. First and foremost, feel confidence that all girls can be caught, he boldly declares, setting a tone of assured optimism that permeates his advice. This conviction stems not from arrogance but from his belief that desire is universal and that skillful pursuit rarely goes unrewarded. Ovid's approach to seduction balances persistence with psychological insight, advocating techniques that recognize and respond to the emotional needs and social position of the desired partner. The poet's tactical advice begins with the cultivation of the right appearance and demeanor. While warning against excessive vanity, men should avoid elaborate hairstyles and overly refined clothing, he nonetheless emphasizes the importance of cleanliness, neat attire, and well-groomed nails. These recommendations reflect Romance society's association of personal grooming with moral character and social status. The ideal lover in Ovid's scheme is casually elegant rather than ostentatiously fashionable, striking a balance between effort and apparent effortlessness. Communication forms the cornerstone of Ovid's seduction strategy. He provides detailed guidance on the composition of love letters, advocating a natural, credible style that avoids both pomposity and crudeness. Persistence in correspondence is essential. Time wears away iron rings, he notes, suggesting that steady attention will eventually overcome initial resistance. In face-to-face encounters, he recommends a mixture of flattery, sympathy, and strategic displays of emotion. Compliments should focus on specific attributes: her hair, her fingers, her musical talent, making the beloved feel uniquely appreciated rather than generically admired. Perhaps most revealingly, Ovid advises the strategic use of deception in pursuit of love. Promises need not be kept, tears can be feigned, and rivals invented to provoke jealousy. Jupiter from above smiles on the perjuries of men in love. He assures his readers, suggesting that conventional morality is suspended in matters of the heart. While these recommendations might strike modern readers as manipulative, they reflect Ovid's consistent framing of love as a game with understood conventions rather than a sacred emotional bond. The poet's advice extends beyond verbal strategies to physical approaches. He recommends gradual escalation of physical contact, from seemingly accidental touches to more deliberate caresses. Noting that some force is permissible, he enters controversial territory by suggesting that women sometimes welcome aggression that they outwardly resist. These passages, among the most problematic for modern readers, reflect Roman attitudes toward gender and consent that diverge sharply from contemporary values. Throughout his instructions, Ovid interweaves mythological exempla that elevate his practical advice through literary allusion. Tales of gods and heroes who succeeded or failed in love serve both as entertainment and reinforcement of his central principles. These mythological digressions, ranging from the tragic story of Pasiphae's unnatural passion for a bull to the comic account of Mars and Venus caught in Vulcan's trap, transform what might otherwise be a simple manual into a sophisticated literary work that engages with a broader classical tradition. Chapter 4. Keeping Affection, the Art of Lasting Love. Having conquered the initial challenges of finding and winning love, Ovid turns his attention to perhaps the most difficult aspect of romance: maintaining a relationship over time. Hunting's hard work, he observes, but so is guarding the kill. With characteristic pragmatism, he acknowledges that novelty inevitably fades and that sustaining desire requires deliberate effort and psychological acumen. His advice for keeping love alive combines practical strategies with insights into human nature that remain remarkably perceptive across the centuries. Central to Ovid's approach is a recognition that familiarity can diminish passion. To counter this natural tendency, he recommends occasional absences. When you are strong and confident, when you know she'll feel your absence, really miss you, go, give her a rest. Like a field left fallow to restore fertility, a relationship benefits from strategic separation that prevents satiation and renews appreciation. This advice reveals Ovid's understanding of the psychological principle that desire intensifies when its object is intermittently unavailable. The management of jealousy forms another key component of Ovid's strategy for maintaining love. While warning against provoking excessive anger, he suggests that a mild dose of jealousy can revitalize a waning relationship. A fire gradually weakens and dies down and lies hidden under a crown of gray ash, yet sprinkle sulfur and it learns to revive. The careful introduction of perceived rival, whether real or invented, can transform complacency into renewed passion. This manipulation of jealousy must be handled delicately. However, as too much can destroy rather than strengthen the bond, Ovid advises lovers to be attentive to their partner's needs and moods, particularly during times of vulnerability. When a beloved falls ill, For instance, the lover should demonstrate care through personal attendance and emotional support. Such moments of weakness provide opportunities to establish oneself as indispensable. Similarly, he recommends accommodating a partner's preferences in daily life, playing games she enjoys, praising her appearance, adapting to her schedule, creating a pattern of attentiveness that sustains affection. Physical intimacy receives detailed attention in Ovid's Guide to Lasting Love. With surprising frankness for his era, he discusses sexual pleasure as a mutual experience rather than a one-sided satisfaction. A fucked woman should melt to her core, he writes, and the pleasure be felt by both in equal measure. This emphasis on reciprocal enjoyment distinguishes Ovid's approach from more conventional Roman attitudes toward sexuality, which often prioritize male gratification. He offers specific advice on positions and techniques suited to different body types, always with attention to mutual satisfaction. Throughout his discussion of maintaining love, Ovid maintains his characteristic balance between practical advice and literary sophistication. Mythological references and poetic imagery elevate his instructions beyond mere technique. His description of lovers reconciling after quarrels, for instance, draws on the image of doves who snuggle, beak to beak, and coo and murmur after fighting. These literary flourishes remind readers that even as love requires practical management, it remains connected to the eternal themes that animate myth and poetry. Chapter 5. Woman's Perspective. Advice for the Female Arts. In a remarkable shift that distinguishes Ovid from most ancient writers on love, his final book addresses women directly, offering them strategies for romantic success from a female perspective. Having armed Greeks against Amazons, he declares, I must now prescribe weapons, Penthesilea, for you and your tribe. This explicit acknowledgement of women as active participants in the game of love, rather than merely passive objects of male desire, represents a significant departure from conventional Roman attitudes. Ovid justifies this approach by invoking the goddess Venus herself, who he claims appeared to him in a dream demanding equal instruction for women. Ovid begins his advice to women with detailed recommendations about physical appearance and grooming. While acknowledging that beauty is a gift of the gods, not equally distributed, he emphasizes that careful attention to presentation can enhance any woman's natural attributes. His detailed catalog of hairstyles, clothing colors, and cosmetic techniques reflects the sophisticated beauty culture of Imperial Rome. These suggestions reveal not only aesthetic preferences but social expectations. Certain styles suited certain face shapes, specific colors complemented different complexions, and appropriate dress signaled one's position and character. The poet's guidance extends beyond appearance to encompass accomplishments that enhance a woman's appeal. He strongly recommends that women learn to sing, play musical instruments, dance gracefully, and familiarize themselves with poetry and literature. These cultural attainments were markers of refinement in Roman society and created opportunities for displaying one's charms in social settings. Even board games and gambling provided chances to demonstrate wit and grace while engaging potential lovers in playful competition. Ovid's emphasis on these accomplishments reflects an appreciation for women as intellectual and artistic beings, not merely physical objects. Particularly innovative is Ovid's advice on how women should navigate social spaces to maximize romantic opportunities. He recommends strategic public appearances at theaters, porticos, religious festivals, and banquets, where women could display themselves advantageously. A beautiful woman should show herself in public, he counsels, recognizing that visibility was essential for attracting admirers. This advice challenged conventional Roman expectations that respectable women should maintain a modest public profile, revealing tensions between traditional values and the social realities of Imperial Rome. In addressing sexual pleasure, Ovid demonstrates remarkable attention to female experience. He advises women on positions and techniques suited to highlighting their best physical features and most surprisingly for ancient literature, explicitly acknowledges female desire and satisfaction. "What a woman should share the pleasure equally with us," he declares, advocating mutual enjoyment rather than one-sided male gratification. While these passages contain objectifying elements typical of the era, they nonetheless represent an unusual recognition of female sexual agency in classical literature. Throughout his advice to women, Ovid demonstrates an understanding of the precarious social position many women occupied. He offers practical strategies for managing jealous husbands, evading guardians, and conducting discreet affairs. These sections reveal the constraints placed on women's freedom in Romance society, while simultaneously suggesting that such constraints were regularly circumvented through ingenuity and determination. The tension between social restrictions and individual desire forms a consistent undercurrent in Ovid's guidance for women, reflecting the complex realities of gender relations in his time. Chapter 6. The Literary Legacy: How Ovid Shaped Western Love Poetry. Ovid's innovative approach to love literature exerted an influence far beyond its immediate cultural context, establishing patterns and perspectives that would shape Western conceptions of romance for centuries to come. His bold fusion of instruction and entertainment, practical advice and mythological allusion, created a template that subsequent writers would adapt to their own cultural moments. From medieval courtly love traditions to Renaissance sonnets and modern romantic comedies, traces of Ovid's distinctive voice continue to resonate throughout Western cultural production. The medieval period witnessed a remarkable revival of Ovidian influence, particularly in the development of courtly love literature. 12th century French poets adapted Ovid's playful approach to seduction, transforming it into the more idealized concept of phenomenon, refined love, in which the male lover submits to an extended period of testing and service to prove his worthiness. Works like the Roman de la Rose explicitly acknowledge their debt to Ovid by reconfiguring his advice for a Christian feudal society. Even as the Church officially condemned Ovid's more licentious passages, his techniques of amorous discourse permeated medieval literary culture, demonstrating how classical models could be reinterpreted to address new social realities. The Renaissance brought a more direct engagement with Ovid's legacy as humanist education made his original texts widely available to a new generation of poets. Petrarch and his followers drew on Ovidian techniques in crafting their idealized portraits of unattainable beloveds, while English poets like Christopher Marlowe produced influential translations of Ovid's amatory works. Shakespeare, dubbed by his contemporaries as the English Ovid, infused his comedies and sonnets with Ovidian within psychological insight. During this period, Ovid's sophisticated understanding of desire as a force that could be analyzed, represented, and even manipulated through art became fundamental to Western literary approaches to love. The Enlightenment and Romantic periods witnessed the complex reconfiguration of Ovid's influence. 18th century poets like Alexander Pope appreciated Ovid's with informal elegance, adapting his techniques to their own social satires. The Romantics, by contrast, rejected his apparently artificial approach to emotion in favor of more spontaneous expressions of feeling. Yet even in this rejection, they engaged with the Ovidian tradition, defining their own approach to love literature against his example. This pattern of influence through opposition demonstrates how deeply Ovid's work had become embedded in Western literary consciousness. Modern and contemporary literature continues to reflect Ovidian elements, often in transformed contexts. The psychological insight that characterizes his analysis of desire finds echoes in the stream of consciousness techniques used by modernist writers to represent romantic experience. Contemporary romantic comedies, with their focus on the game-like aspects of courtship and their witty dialogue, owe an unacknowledged debt to Ovid's playful approach to love. Even dating manuals and relationship advice columns participate in a tradition of instructional love literature that traces its origins to his work. Beyond specific literary forms, Ovid's most profound legacy may lie in his recognition that love, while experience as a natural emotion is always mediated through cultural forms and social conventions. His understanding that desire is simultaneously physical, psychological, and cultural, and that it can be analyzed and represented through art, established a framework for thinking about love that remains influential today. By treating romance as both a universal human experience and a culturally specific set of practices, he created a model for love literature that continues to inform Western understandings of this most enduring human preoccupation. Thank you for listening. Audiobook by Mysterious Untold Books.